Welcome to the Nine's Summoning Insight, presented by AT&T. We had some technical issues this week, unfortunately, so we're back to our breaking point set. Hopefully we'll have a new full episode with our guests for you next week. Obviously, things are a little bit crazy now with the COVID-19 outbreak. As you can tell, Thorin and I are in the same room.
The quality should actually be better then, because you know the joke is, it's a good joke, but it's going to be the case with every internet show, which is obviously whoever hosts it, their webcam's just direct, so they get the great quality.
Yes.
And then each one, just because the way those boxes work, tends to be progressively worse. So you know the joke is always like, the host's like 720p, and then this guy's 480p, and then there's always one who does look 180p, like they have the worst possible quality. It's all like pixelated and dragged out. So we actually just look like real humans for once.
Yeah, and also, if you guys are concerned about our quarantine status, we still go into the Flashpoint studio. Media has been exempted in Los Angeles from the gathering over 10 people. We're still running with a skeleton crew, but Thorin and I would be next to each other anyway, so we're going to go over to the Flashpoint studio.
This is a fisheye lens. We're actually about 10 metres apart. It's really weird. And also, we're really thin actually in real life. So.
That's right. Super skinny. But we need to talk about some of the issues that happened this week, most particularly the rather egregious news that Travis Gafford broke, which is that, let me get this straight, that the Players Association for the LCS voted, the majority of the players voted to cancel the spring split. Now, part of this vote, now again, it wasn't everybody, but over 50%, that's what we know. And I knew this information beforehand, but I couldn't talk about it. But now that Travis has come out with it journalistically, we could discuss it. So over 50% of the players voted to cancel the spring season. We don't know exactly what percentage. And the largest reason, according to Jack from Cloud9, was that they thought, let me get this quote right, didn't think spring split was worth anything. Now, that doesn't mean over 50% of the players voted. It was just the largest reason that people voted. Obviously, there were numerous other issues, like the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, people wanting to go home. All of that is very understandable. We're not trying to sort of attack that as a reason, like people will behave in different ways in these times, and if they want to go home, that's valid. Now, that said, we must address first the primary issue, which is that they didn't think the spring split was worth anything. Now, objectively, I agree with them. In fact, we've criticized the spring split as being relatively meaningless now on the show, and I do think it's a format flaw with Riot, right?
Sure. In the context, when they say anything, they mean in the context of the whole, of like your whole career and the whole year, and obviously
and
leading
worlds.
into Worlds, which is the end goal. In that context, like objectively, it's one of the least important things in the whole calendar.
Yeah, and we have suggested, in fact, that you actually you combine spring and summer split, have MSI in the middle, maybe start in February or March instead of January, because the season is really, really long already for the top teams, and it's understandable that players who elevate the status of Worlds in their mind to the ultimate tournament, which it is, really want the meaning there that they used to have potentially with the Worlds points that they would get in the spring split, which they have now removed. Now, my first reaction to seeing that removal was like, I'm not a huge fan of this format.
The thing I don't understand about this, though, is this is where, like, because first of all, I know a lot of people are going to think, why is this even a big story? Like, okay, the players didn't want to do it, but it's not like what they said is going to happen anyway. But that in itself, just the precedent that they decided collectively, like, screw it. And then, crucially, that it's not the COVID thing. If it was that, I'd at least have some understanding. I would still personally argue, like, if you're at home and you're safe, you can provide actually entertainment for all the people who also are trapped at home but can't do their jobs. And then secondly, mate, I don't know what you guys are doing with your careers as pro players, but there's a lot of people in the world right now wish they could go to work and make some money. You aren't going to be making any income for potentially months if this keeps up. So that's to by the by, though, because the key issue is they just didn't think that the split matters. So in theory, they could have made this vote anyway.
Some of them did cite those other concerns, but I think objectively it is worse for the players to be traveling right now. If they have the option to stay in one place and kind of weather the storm and minimize contact, I think that's objectively the right move. But again,
the thing that
that's
doesn't
an
make
individual
sense,
decision.
this is the part that doesn't make sense, is built into the assumption that you need to go home because of the COVID stuff, is the assumption that you want to do social distancing and that you want to be safe with your family.
Yes.
Yet, by definition, you are also admitting that you are going to then travel and meet people you haven't met in the last few months. That goes against the initial premise. That's
Yes.
the part I don't get. Is like, it's actually, I get why people would do it because it's emotion, but it is irrational. Like, it actually makes less sense if you believe the initial premise.
Right. But you know, it
Just
is
stay in one spot.
it is
Stay
an
where you
irrational
are.
decision.
Yes,
so some
of
people would
course.
have voted. They also may not have had the information that we have right now. But let's go into the actual. Didn't think Spring Split was worth anything.
This is the thing I want to say though, because the part that doesn't make sense is, I wouldn't mind it if they said, like we have, I don't think Spring Split matters, therefore we want one of these options. Theirs is just cancel the whole thing and do nothing. That was, by the way, that was never what we were suggesting. Our suggestion wasn't, it's better to have no League of Legends and then just have summer. Like, we wanted to have something instead, right? Like a different tournament,
Right,
different
and also,
circuit, you know.
and also, it didn't kill. I want to point out, like, it didn't kill our motivation to
No,
continue
no.
to make League of Legends content. Now we can make the content and say, like, well, we're going to do this show every week and we're going to talk about it. But yes, we admit that it isn't like the most consequential split in the history of anything. But it's not like it doesn't matter at all, or it's not like we canceled. We were like, well, fuck Spring Split. We're canceling Summoning Insight. That's it. No, in fact, we still have to do our jobs. It's weird to get paid.
I mean, believe it or not, guys, if you're a pro player, just think about this for a second. I don't actually ever think LCS was that important. Believe it or not, I always thought it was an inferior league that didn't have that much, you ready, consequence on the actual results of Worlds anyway, because of the teams being qualified. None of them ever made the final, just saying.
Only
Just
one
saying.
ever made semis ever.
Just saying. So, but the joke is, obviously, we find a separate, an auxiliary reason to care, which is in this case doing an entertaining show, having something to talk about, and the fact that all the Western fans care about. You know, that's a pretty good reason in itself.
Yeah, NA fans, do you think that when I was living in Korea and casting LCK that I gave a fuck about LCS? I mean, I did in that I covered it because you enjoyed it and it was funny to talk about it, but I was really doing it for the NA fans. I wasn't doing it because I was mega psyched about it. It's like asking an NFL commentator if they're super psyched at casting like or commentating or making shows on Division III NCAA football. Now, obviously that difference, you know, the gap has closed a little bit over the years, but if you look at, you know, 2014, 2015 when we were doing this show, I wasn't mega happy about having to watch those games because it was a giant waste of my time, but you liked it, so we did it, and also it was funny to make fun of them. Oh, so I sort of liked it too.
Sure. No, that's why I used to love it, by the way, anytime on my show with Kelsey, where, because on that show, we knew it was never going to have the biggest viewership anyway, so it gave us full license to have any guests we wanted on. So obviously we would have a whole bunch of times a guest on where it'd be someone who themselves wasn't even famous, and then the region they wanted to talk about was LMS. Now, obviously, loads of fans would be like, who cares about the LMS? It's not even relevant. And I was like, got some bad news for you guys. Remember, I always say this. I'm not from America. I don't even have to care about LCS. Kind of like, I could just only do LEC or nothing whatsoever. So, whatever. Anyway, what we've established there is entertainment itself is a good factor. Think about that, pro players. Because the angle I don't get is this. Essentially, I mean, I actually think even legally, most freelancers, most pros to this day technically have a freelance contract, right? Do they actually get employee benefits like healthcare nowadays?
Yeah, I think they do now.
They do in good teams? Okay.
Yeah, I think there were some changes a few years ago to the state of California employment law that kind of forced them to give them as full-time employees. I'm not sure. That's like probably something we shouldn't get into immediately because I'm not 100% sure where player contracts
but where I was
exist
leading
right
with
now.
this is, like, one thing that does confuse me. Listen, I know we often mention this. A lot of pro players obviously are very young, and some of them have had no real life work experience. But the part that puzzles me is, are you all? I know everyone hears about these buyouts of Vulcan and the insane Hooney contract. I'm pretty sure you aren't all just sitting on millions that you can just chill back on and just wait years to work. Like, presumably you need money. So the crazy part of this assumption, I thought, of that they want to cancel the Spring Split is, I'm pretty sure what they actually meant, if I expand it out, put the square brackets in, is we vote to cancel the Spring Split, but still get paid for playing. Like, what? Wait a minute, what? Listen, because if you cancel it, like if you just go, you know what, have all the money back, I don't actually want to play, that's one thing. The idea, because I'm pretty sure, Monty, they thought they were going to cancel it and still get paid. That's quite crazy, actually. Because remember, the average salary is like $300K a year.
Oh, yeah, okay, so we have to start with this. In 2018, Forbes reported, and this was directly from Riot,
This is when franchising began, 2018.
Yeah. So Riot actually. So what happened? The process, so you guys know, is that teams submit all player contracts to Riot. Riot goes through them to make sure everything's kosher, and so Riot knows exactly how much all the players are getting paid.
Sure.
It's mandatory for teams to submit those contracts. So in 2018, they said that the average player salary in the LCS was $320,000 a year. Now, a lot of people want the median salary, which we don't know, which is a fair question because obviously some of the big $1 million.
I guess it'd probably be like $200K or something if you think about the huge contracts.
And
be a little bit lower.
I would be shocked if in 2020, 2 years later, there was any player that was a starter, and probably even most bench players that were making under $100K.
Yeah, it feels like six figures minimum.
I would say six figures minimum, and the average salary is definitely higher. I can tell you now because the thing is, every time one of these like VC teams comes in, like Evil Geniuses or Dignitas that just entered, they go on these massive spending sprees. That's where we got this like Hooney is making $1.2 million a year, which is obviously ridiculous. Especially because it's like 2 years at that rate and like guaranteed, which is even crazier. But that's how these new teams have to enter the market because otherwise no one's going to sign with them. So they keep driving the player salaries up. So I would say player salaries on average are higher now. And also median has gone up. I would be shocked if the median, like you said, wasn't over 200K, if not much higher than that. And I mean, at this point in time, you have to remember that 7 out of these 10 teams are not going to Worlds.
Sure.
And 9 out of these 10 teams are not going to MSI. So really, what most of these players on this average salary are playing for, 70% of them, is only Spring Split and Summer Split, which goes from, January to August? And then you have the rest of the time off, barring some boot camps. So when we talk about $320,000 a year, we're really talking about, for most players...
It's about half a year if you think about it.
It's like 6 or 7 months.
If you add all the weeks together, I think if you add playoffs... which again, not every team makes, but if you add the playoffs to the number of normal weeks, I think normally it's about 11 weeks for a split, something around 10 or 11.
Yeah, it's 9 weeks plus playoffs.
Let's say, obviously, most teams don't make it to the end of playoffs. Let's say we add 1 week just for most teams, so we say like 12, so 2 times 12, 24. That's not even half a year. You actually, that's the joke. It's 300K a year. It's actually 300K for half a year. You get the other half to just do nothing.
And not only that, guess what? These players can stream to make additional income, and many of the bigger streamers, like look at guys like Doublelift or Froggen, who are pulling in thousands and thousands of viewers, right? Bjergsen can obviously also pull in huge streamer numbers, and not every player can do that, but there are opportunities here for additional income that they can create. And what I find so ridiculous about this whole thing is that it's just incredibly frustrating to see these people in this crisis, even if I understand what they mean, because some of them could have said that Spring Split doesn't matter because it's played online. Like, under the changing circumstances, they could have said,
like... competitive integrity angle, like, all the other splits were offline, and so I don't want, like, even if... The cool way to say it, by the way, would be if, like, Cloud9 themselves were like, even if we're going to win it, we want to win, like, so it's comparable to the past champion. That would be an interesting angle to take. Like, I might go with that myself as a person,
Sure. Yeah, there is a difference between LAN and online competition, for sure. So we don't know the context of when they said, like, it doesn't have meaning, because it could mean that, well, they were proposed... that it was going to be switched to online, which means that it doesn't have meaning. But regardless, like, come on, guys. It is literally, people are asking you to sit in your house and not leave in your pajamas or your sweatpants, like I'm wearing right now, and just go ahead and play the matches. Like, it's even easier than going to a literal studio, and no one is firing you. No one is trying to cut your pay. You are still getting paid throughout this entire bullshit. Like, your job fundamentally is just to show up to these games. And I think what's so staggering about this is it really just shows what an absolute trash mentality these North American LCS players have. Obviously not everybody, maybe even a minority, because we don't know what percentage of people, of those who voted to cancel for this reason. We just know it was the biggest reason.
The problem is, and this is something where people just are going to have to trust us all or else liars, it just, when we heard this news, it just overlaps too comfortably with things we do hear from pro players privately,
exactly.
Where they do have sort of an entitled opinion of what they should have in life, and some of them, the joke is, think that they're actually like oppressed with how much money they make for playing a video game that came out over 10 years ago.
But yeah, it is that we know behind the scenes, because what you guys see is you see the player saying, oh, I really want to win. We're trying so hard. We're practicing so hard. But what we know actually happens doesn't reflect that. Like, there are players who are super motivated. In my personal experience with Cloud9, those players have been incredibly motivated. In my personal experience with other players that I know about, I do see that motivation. I look at an import player like Someday who's playing his ass off this split, and it's obvious that some of these guys are really trying. But for a lot of these players, what they say to you and what their actual behavior is are two very different things. And you can actually just see this. And we know that this is true because of the whole fiasco with in-houses. Like, the players, this is the system of complaints. The players say solo queue and NA is worthless. So they want to do in-houses. So they start organizing in-houses. Oh, Riot comes and says, you can't stream the in-houses. Many players want to stream when they're not actually practicing. Oh, what is that? Riot says you can stream the in-houses now. So now you can monetize your in-house practice. So who the fuck's playing in-houses right now? Who the fuck was playing in-houses for the last couple of weeks? Nobody. And when we heard it in our first preview show, what Zabutin said was that there wasn't anybody to organize them. So I said, well, why don't all the teams get together and just literally pay somebody a salary to organize in-houses around practices? Seems like that's probably worth, I don't know, a few grand a team a year.
Level everyone's ability up, of course.
Think about how much you're paying for these players.
Yeah.
It is such a minor expense if it's spread across all 10 teams. Oh, well, nobody's done that either. So you already have the evidence that these players, mostly don't give a fuck. And it's just, when it comes out where they directly vote that they don't give a fuck, I don't know what more damning evidence you need. Because that is such a shitty mentality for for players who are getting paid this much money and who keep saying that they want to be competitive, but there's no actual evidence that they want to be competitive at all.
Plus, I'll even add in, it's very different for me. This is why I thought that whole thing where everyone scrutinised Doublelift a lot was, I think people went a bit, they were too eager to bash on him. Because I totally get why you definitely can criticise him for wanting to get, an enormous salary and barely play the split. Or, in his case, it seemed like he was mailing in his performance and not trying his hardest, etc. That on one level is outrageous, but I at least understand if the guy who could put in all his effort to win Spring, but then that wouldn't actually mean much in his career. He's won Spring a million times, and obviously he wants to go to Worlds. That's what he wants to do. I get it if that guy's sort of well, I don't want to focus on Spring. I want to focus on the rest of the year. But like you were saying, most teams don't go to Spring. Not every team even makes the playoffs. So if you're a guy playing for the 8th best team in LCS, you better be killing yourself in the Spring, because what are you being paid for other than that? Your performance there is all you're being paid for.
Well, and that's the crazy thing about this, right? Is that there doesn't actually seem to be a hunger for improvement. In many other sports, a player would be hungry to make themselves known, to try and practice and be the best. But we don't really see that drive from most, I won't say most, a large percentage of the North American professional players. And they're happy just sitting here and collecting paychecks and not actually being competitive or taking the necessary steps to be more competitive. And this also reflects on what happens in other regions. For example, in Europe, players are paid much less, but their performance is much greater. In Korea, players are paid much less, but historically their performance has been much greater. The European players know they can come to NA for more money, but they stay there because they actually have a competitive drive. And there hasn't been the success in NA to really lure them over there. If you really want to win, getting that bigger paycheck is nice, but it doesn't actually accomplish your goals, which is why Europe continues to be more competitive. And we also see many more rookie players coming up because the scene itself is more competitive and the drive is more competitive over there. So, the whole thing is really, I think, disturbing for North America. And I think that at this point, if you're a team owner right now, and now you have the evidence, you actually have the evidence that the players voted this way, I think you need to start fundamentally changing the way contracts are issued in North America. Because you have a players' association to bargain against, so you, the owners, can collectively negotiate against the collective of the players to figure out how exactly you're going to solve this problem. But this needs to be addressed this offseason.
It's a very famous concept in the NBA that players always magically have a spike in their stats on their contract year, where at the end of that year they're going to be a free agent. So what you do is obviously you play your ass off, and then in the free agency, that way not only does your own team give you the contract you want, but then a couple of other suitors come in. I actually feel by the logic of that, there's a way we can make it inherently have value. Is if you're if, like, first of all, playing all your games in the spring split gets you all your salary, if part of your salary is competitive incentives, like making the playoffs would be an obvious one. If you were Team Liquid, it would be like win the split, obviously. You make it appropriate and relative to each team and what their goals are. That would be a great way just itself to make people want to play. Because part of the issue here is, if you do just give someone all the money at the beginning like that, and then just say like, well, whatever happens, happens. It's like, yeah, but there's some people, unfortunately, aren't self-motivated. They will just go, well, I've got the money already, so I'll just do the minimum possible to secure that. So I think that's something that should actually happen. They should make it so you kill yourself to get those spots.
I mean, my preference at this point in time would be to take as much as 50% of their salary and incentivize it. And in fact, I think that the carrot that the owners can put out there for the players is they can say, guess what? We're going to pay you even more than we do right now.
Good idea, yeah.
But you got to win. You got to win LCS, or we're going to pay you more than the top value of your contract. So if they're paying Hooney 1.2 million, say, hey Hooney, if you make finals, we'll pay you 1.5 million. But if you don't make playoffs, you only get 750,000 or something like that, right? You need to actually create these motivators, because it's clear, it is now abundantly clear that the players are not going to do this themselves, and that there isn't anything that is actually going to motivate them. You could even set up incentives like, you should play in this many in-houses in order to get this bonus. Like, there's tons of ways you can structure this, but it's clear that guaranteed money from these teams, where the players are going to make that amount no matter what, and on those multi-year contracts, are bullshit and are never going to fix the scene. So part of this is also calling out the owners. Yeah, because the owners have to do something about this as well.
One detail to make that's worth pointing out when you say that is, that's why we highlight the amount where the average is 300k. Because if you took any fan watching this now, who presumably is like a college student or works some normal job, like the sort of job I would have worked if I didn't do esports, probably make like 30k a year for doing a 40-hour work week. If you had that sort of money and someone came to you and said, oh, you like League of Legends anyway, I'll pay you 150k to play the spring split, you would fall over yourself to take that deal and snap the guy's arm off. But the joke is, there's people who really are being offered that, and they're going, I vote no, actually, let's not have a spring split. So the point here is, the raw number of guaranteed money, you could put another zero on there and some of them would say no. They would, because they're obviously, like, they've got past the threshold of what they needed to live. They're way over the 30k for a whole year. So if the raw money guaranteed isn't incentivized them, you have to make a different way. You have to restructure where that money gets to them to make them want to get more.
Yeah. And also, there's the additional factor that people might not be aware of, which is that, so the average is $300,000, but the players have, for the most part, free housing in Los Angeles. Well, you're saving
expenses are almost nothing.
Yeah, you're saving $2,000 to $3,000 a month that you would pay for your own apartment. You get all your food catered for you. What you basically don't have any expenses. So this $300,000 we're talking about is just like money straight in the bank. It's discretionary income.
It's even better than a salary.
It's even better. So in addition, you can basically on any player's deal add probably like another 30 or 40 grand in expenses that they are not paying. That is not taxed either, that they're just like picking up on top of that contract. So even if you are a median player, if you have a median salary and we pretend that's 150 or 200,000, well, you're still getting all of your living expenses paid for and utilities. Internet, electric, a lot of the times. So the teams are picking up these expenses too. So it's even more ridiculous that these guys are getting paid and they're voting to just basically sit in their apartment that is also getting paid for doing nothing. I mean, the whole thing is fucking absurd.
I also just think it's whack as well, because another angle I find weird about this whole issue is what supposedly is panicking people. I hope people don't, because as you see, everything literally changes in this current world scenario day to day. Like, no one really knows what's going on. In theory, the stressful thing isn't even supposed to be the everyday reality, because most people aren't getting wrecked. It's the uncertainty, right? No one knows when it's going to end. Is it going to be a month now? Is it going to be 6 months? Like in my game, CSGO, stuff's getting cancelled that's months away. It hasn't even started yet. So in our world, we're prepping for, like, we don't even know if there's going to be events till the end of the year. So on a similar level, if you have the chance to play now, no one even knows if we'll be able to play in 2 months. Maybe they'll cancel something entirely. So this is your only, if you actually have any competitive drive, you want to play somewhere if you're a pro.
Well, it's also, your career. If you're also anywhere in esports, this is our time, because there's so many people watching this content
way more
right
eyes
now.
on it now, yeah.
So this is an insane opportunity for all of us. And yeah, it sucks that everybody's stuck inside, and it's not an ideal situation, but I think for our end, like, we're highly motivated to create the most content, to put on shows for you guys, to keep you entertained while you're all cooped up. And the pro players can do exactly the same thing. And I really just don't even think that the pro players like understand how good they have it, because to put this in context, I don't think any caster in any game that I know of has ever made $300K a year. Ever. Maybe some of the multi-game hosts
Maybe
do.
like Henry G in CS might, but that's when he does like every event in the year, basically.
It also requires him to travel, like,
yeah, of course,
200.
So basically, only maybe the absolute top of the pyramid of raw freelance day rates and stuff. Yeah,
and also
that's the best.
And they might make it if they include streaming, but also we're not including streaming in the player deal.
Right.
So like, if you're making other content, maybe some outliers. I mean, I can tell you personally from a casting employer, I've never made $300,000 in a year. And if you look at other traditional sports, casters like Tony Romo just signed like an $18 million caster deal, so that you're not ever going to get paid as much as a superstar athlete, obviously, or a superstar player, but you can get into like the kind of medium upper ranges of getting paid. So we're talking about the average, and no caster that I know of has ever made the average. It's incredibly difficult to do that. And it would take, like you said, a caster running so many events around the world that it's absolutely crazy. It's not in the same scenario where you're only playing for 6 or 7 months. It's also the outlier.
Like, we're talking about like it's the equivalent of Faker basically in casting world, but we're contrasting it to anyone from FlyQuest.
Yes, exactly. So I guess in my mind too, what you see right now, pro players, is you see all the casters and you see the production teams and all the staff who are making less money than you are. They're busting their ass to put these tournaments online and keep things rolling and keeping the motivation up, and you guys are voting to cancel everything. Like, that's such a dick move, it's unreal. I don't get why you would actually go and, like, you can't even see that other people are trying to keep you safe, keep you in your best ability to play the game under these circumstances, and you can't even deal with that.
You know what? Obviously, this term is completely tainted and a cursed word at this time, but that term, like privilege, this is one of the rare times that term applies, because it's something actually that I've always told, like obviously some of my mates who've had problems with teams, like Forgiven. One thing I often told them as an argument is, forget even just your own career. Think about how many people are killing themselves right now who are like just below your level competitive, who would die for your spot in the LEC, and you're just going to like give it up or complain about your teammates and want to be benched. Like that's why it's whack, because it's like, mate, your job is a dream job. As in a literal yeah, you've got it. So like and now you're complaining about, like, you can definitely complain, but like appreciate the position you're in that sense. Because I agree, like a lot of people right now wish they could go to work, wish they could do something.
Yeah. And those people who are just like crushing it right now to set up all of these broadcasts and continuing to put on this content. And by the way, guys, players, this content is designed to feature you. It is designed to make you look better and look more famous. And you have so many people who are out there trying to make sure that you stay on camera, so that you can keep making money.
Just look how active.
And you're trying to deny that.
All the LCS, LEC people, they've been super active. All the broadcast people, I've seen them all over social media since all this shit broke out.
Yeah, not only that, but making other content. We were supposed to have Ender on the show today, so like they're making themselves available in terms of other broadcast content as well. I know at the Overwatch League, like the casters have been doing the same thing, setting up all their stuff from home. So it's just embarrassing. And I just, at this point, like, it can't go on. Like, they must be punished for this. There's not really another option. It's so detrimental to the NA. It's so insulting to the NA fans, because, I mean, your league sucks, but you talk about privilege too, and it's mind-boggling to think that these players who are getting paid this much money to be in the 4th best region in the world are having this issue. Like, you're not even expected to be elite. You're not even expected to contend at Worlds. All you have is LCS, you idiots. Like, that's the only shot at glory most of you guys have. It's such an outlier for an NA team to perform well at an international competition that you're actually just trying to kill the one thing that can make you look good. It's mind-boggling.
Hey there, buckaroos and buckarettes. Welcome to another edition of the Cloud9 Roundup. I hope you're all comfortable at home while we wait out this COVID-19 pandemic. I'm wearing some of my Cloud9 Puma gear, and lucky for you, there's a new spring collection dropping right now in the Cloud9 store, so head on over to check it out. In our latest news, of course, the League of Legends Championship Series also known as the LCS, returned this week, and so did Cloud9's dominance with wins over 100 Thieves and CLG, as C9 hopes to secure that #1 spot in the LCS playoffs. What's more, Cloud9 did some good this week, as they ran the Wash Your Hands charity tournament alongside FlyQuest, Dignitas, and Immortals, raising money for the COVID-19 crisis. Now, Cloud9 didn't win, choking again in the finals. That may be familiar right now. To FlyQuest, but all the same, good on all the teams and players for doing a good effort to raise money in this time of need. Also, over in the Academy, Cloud9 also beat CLG Academy and 100 Thieves, doubling down in wins against those two teams. Another 2-0 week for the League of Legends Academy team. Now, over in the Blizzard titles, it wasn't the best week for Cloud9, but you know what? They're still going to do some good here, as Cloud9 does finish top 4 in the Method Mayhem NA 3v3 Season 1. Now, they fell, though, to a team that I have to pronounce very carefully. Sofa King Sick, but still a top 4 finish. In Hearthstone Masters Los Angeles, C9 Flurry, Dawn, and Colento all ended their time just a little bit short of the top players. Flurry fell 0-2, Dawn fell 1-3, and the famous Colento, well, he ended his time 4-5. Best of luck to our Cloud9 Hearthstone players next time. We'll finish out this week's roundup with some great news. Cloud9's Rocket League team has officially made the LCS playoffs. Now, they only finished a smidge above 500 with a 5-4 record, but that's still good enough to challenge for the title. We'll see you soon, and good luck to Cloud9's Rocket League team. Finally, you may have been watching some Flashpoint recently because yours truly is hosting, and I don't mean Cowboy Monty, I mean regular Monty. We've had some fun games here, and especially fun was Cloud9's win over the legendary former NIP lineup, now named Dignitas, in Flashpoint. As we speak right now, I think that Cloud9 will be playing that group title game up against Orglis. It's a chance to make a big statement for our young Counter-Strike roster. Now, that's been it for this week's Cloud9 Roundup. Thank you very much for joining me, and now that esports seems to be getting back on track, we'll see you next week. Till then.